Hello everyone, welcome into another episode of the Sports Hub right here on SBTV. I'm Michael Wengrzyn, and alongside me for today, you know them already, Alex Strouf and Jackson Jirik. Guys, how was your leap day on Saturday?
My leap day was busy. I was down in Madison covering the 77th annual WIAA Individual State Wrestling Tournament for a couple of newspapers on a freelance basis. So it was busy, it was hectic, but it was a lot of fun as I am a big fan of state wrestling. I always argue I think it's the best atmosphere in all of high school sports. So it was a lot of fun. It was busy.
Yeah, I paid attention to you on Twitter, so that was pretty cool.
Happy to hear that.
I know, and I just did some shopping. You know, typical college kid stuff.
What were you shopping for?
I needed some new socks.
Great. I'm happy to hear you got some new socks.
It's always important. Make sure to keep your feet clean and you got comfortable socks on. Definitely. Especially this time of the year. As on today's show, we'll talk about the UWSP men's and women's basketball seasons, the NFL Combine, we'll take a current look at the NHL season, and do some buy or sell. The UWSP men's basketball season came to an end last Tuesday in a 65-59 loss to UW Eau Claire in the first round of the WIAC tournament. The Pointers early on held a small advantage over the Blue Gulls, but found themselves in trouble as they trailed by 16 going into halftime. While the Pointers reemerged in the second half and slashed the deficit late in the game to 3 points, the effort was just too late. Guys, what are your thoughts on the season for the Pointers, and how different will the program be next year?
Yeah, I mean, the season, ultimately, I think we always talk about this, right? The expectation, the mentality is a championship mentality always. So when you reflect on the season, obviously a first-round exit from the WIAC tournament is not ideal. We found out Monday their fate is not in the NCAA tournament, so the season ultimately comes to an end. It's I don't want to say it's disappointing because they did have some big wins. They played some big games. They had some big moments. But when you're not advancing in the WIAC tournament into the NCAA tournament, obviously there was a level of frustration there. And how different will the team be next year? Well, very different, right? You lose a guy like Ethan Boob. Let's use Matt Kerner, Aaron Canez, Blake Erkey. I mean, you're losing, I think, 5 guys from this squad. So Garrett Nelson, it's your turn. This becomes his team, and it becomes very interesting going forward. I mean, obviously, the Pointers men's basketball team has often preached the next man up mentality, and we saw how that worked this year, right? You have 7 guys leave from last year into this year, and you have the 5 seniors, a couple juniors, even a couple sophomores and freshmen playing some valuable minutes, stepping up and making overall an over 500 season that came to a disappointing end. So it will be different, but when you're working underneath Bob Semling, I think the future's still bright, as always.
Yeah, a bright future for sure for this UWSP men's basketball team. You lose to Eau Claire, tough loss. It was close. They had an opportunity there. They were, like you said, 3 points. They could have tied that game. Eau Claire did make the NCAA tournament, so they were a good team. It's not hard to look back and be – you still want to be disappointed in yourself, but Eau Claire is a very good basketball team making it to the tournament, 1 of 3 from the WIAC. So in that aspect, you got to respect them and making it there. But like you said, first round exit, never good. And losing 5 seniors, like, that's hard. But 7 from the year before, 5 this year. Garrett Nelson, you're the guy that's going to have to lead this team. You got to look to guys like Zach Moots and Peter Timmerman to take their next step up and help lead their team with Garrett Nelson. And as mentioned, Semling's next man up mentality. It's going to be interesting to see how these Pointers come out next year and see how they respond to losing 5 seniors. They responded very well this year to losing 7, but now a lot of those guys starting 5 seniors seemed at most nights when we were covering them. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to it next year and going into this offseason.
I want to throw in a quick question here for you two. Looking at the WIAC standings in terms of statistics and stuff like that, the Pointers were last in scoring offense in the WIAC this season, but first in scoring defense. What do you think the differences between those 2 areas reflected the way that they played out on the court?
I think it's a story of almost every year for these Pointers, right? I mean, since the Bennett era with Tony Bennett and all the Bennett, Jack Bennett, excuse me, when he coached here, ever since then it has been a defensive mentality for the Pointers. I mean, historically that's how it's been. They've been defense, defense, defense. Again this year, you mentioned a top defense in the WIAC. And they struggle, not necessarily struggle, but they don't need to put up as many points to win when you're really pushing it on the defensive side of the ball. How does that reflect it? I mean, obviously a near 500 season, 500 in the WIAC this year. So I just don't know if you had the studs that other teams did potentially. I mean, obviously we look at a team like Platteville where they have multiple options that could go off for 20 any night. Teams like Oshkosh, Eau Claire, they have many guys down the roster that could go they could be a walking bucket any night they so choose, where Stevens Point this year, they only had, maybe 3 guys that could actually go do that: Ethan Bublitz, Blake Erkey, and Garrett Nelson. So I don't know if it's necessarily a direct reflection of the play and the statistics, but that is an interesting note you bring up, Mike. But I mean, as I mentioned, this has always been a defensive first mentality type of team for decades at a time here at Stevens Point. And again, it was pretty much the same story, old news this year.
Yeah, very good points brought up. We saw the Pointers lose a lot of close games this year where they had opportunities to close them out, and that would have been a huge difference, especially in the WIAC where it's one of the hardest divisions or conferences to win in and compete in. I mean, 2 buzzer beater losses that we saw where they had an opportunity to win, and their defense showed up against very good teams like the one in Platteville where you guys covered it. That was a great game, had an opportunity to win it. Defense was there, but offensively they just struggled, and they looked great in the first half, but then that second half came along, and it seemed like it was all season long. That second half was the nail in the coffin for these Pointers, and they just couldn't close out games, and that was the hard part about it.
Yeah, a season for the Pointers nonetheless, though, wasn't that much of a loss, but however ends in a loss to UW-Eau Claire in the WIAC tournament as they finished their season 15-11 overall and 7-7 in WIAC play. The UWSP women's basketball team also had a similar narrative as they saw their season end in a loss to UW-Eau Claire in the first round of the WIAC tournament as they fell 63-72 last Tuesday. The two teams would be neck and neck in the first 3 quarters, but an early 10-point run in the fourth quarter by the Blue Golds doomed Stevens Point. While the Pointers would get to within a basket with 2 minutes remaining, the Blue Golds went on a late run to seal the deal. Guys, how different will the program, or how will the program look for next year? They're only losing 1 senior. Yeah. What's going to be some changes made next year?
Yeah, Carly Serrato, the only one that plays on the court that will be leaving this program due to graduation. So, assuming you're going to retain a good amount of girls, obviously we saw how valuable those juniors were. Just to name a few: Taylor Greenheck, Kellen Schmitt, Bailey Collins. You've got some studs. You've got a lot to build on. Now, this is kind of the last chance for the biggest group, the juniors to be seniors next year under Shirley Egner. I imagine this team actually has a lot of potential next year in the WIAC. I mean, these juniors this year have been playing a lot of minutes since they were freshmen. So this was the big recruiting class of the last 4 or 5 years for Stevens Point. And now it's their time to shine come next year. So I think this team has a very, very good chance to be right in the fight for the WIAC title in the regular season and the tournament all year long next year. And I think it would be underwhelming if they weren't there. So I think this team has a really, really good shot to be right there, at least near the top all year next year. I think big things are ahead.
Yeah, top 3 team next year looking up. Obviously, Carly Serrato, 4th all-time in 3-pointers made for this Pointers program. So congrats to her on a great career here at UWSP. Like you said, 4 juniors. It's going to be those girls to lead the team: Collins, Greenheck, Schmitt, and Amber Bayman. Those 4 scorers led the team almost, it seemed like, every night, and it'll be interesting to see how they play next year. Should be a top 3 team expected, and anything less than that seems, like you said, to be an underwhelming factor if it comes to that. You look at the sophomores going into there. Jess Slowick had a really good game against Eau Claire, so we'll look to her to lead that junior class as they're to be juniors next year. And then some freshmen coming in and freshmen to be sophomores. It's a positive outlook for this Pointers women's team as long as they can play their game and Shirley Egner coaches them well.
Yeah, and again, we have Alex, you and I covered a game together, and Jackson and Alex, I know you guys covered the game together. It's going to be interesting to see how well the Pointers handle the adversity of retaining this program as well going forward into next season and also for the future. As the Pointers this season finished their season 10-16 overall and 5-9 in WIAC play. We'll take our first time out here on the show, and then when we return, we'll talk about the NFL Combine and take a current look at the NHL season. This is the Sports Hub on SBTV.
I just wanted to get good grades and to do well. But it also made me realize that I have a lot of career goals.
You're there to get a full college experience, not only participate in your sport, but participate in things outside of that, and it's all about growing as a person.
My coaches have helped me with figuring out who I really am. Their lives are dedicated for us to succeed.
Welcome back into the Sports Hub. The annual NFL Combine took place this past weekend in Indianapolis. All 32 teams had the chance to take a closer look at many different draft prospects and evaluate the stock for the NFL Draft come April. Several former Badgers were invited to the Combine, including Jonathan Taylor, Quintez Cephas, and Zach Bond. What do you guys think of this year's list of draft prospects, and which position classes do you think have the most talent?
It's the most wonderful time of the year. I love the NFL Draft. You know I do. Obviously, we do a big special every year here on the Sports Hub for the NFL Draft because it's freaking awesome, man. So you brought up two names from the Badgers that I want to touch on briefly. The first being Jonathan Taylor. Guy's a speedster. Guy kind of probably locked himself as a first-round, if not early second-round draft pick in the top running back in the NFL Draft. I mean, that's got to be unanimous, at least coming from us, because Jonathan Taylor looked terrific in the workouts that he did participate in. Looking at Quintez Cephas, put up, when he did the bench press, he not only put up the top mark for wide receivers, he put up the top mark for all prospects at that point when he did that. So he kind of stole the show on the bench press, did Quintez Cephas, so he's making his case in a stocked wide receiver class. Now I will answer your next question. What positions do we look at in the NFL Draft as being the top ones this year? Obviously, we can look at quarterback. You've got Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love, a bunch of other names. Jake Fromm, James Morgan. I mean, there are names and names and names in that NFL quarterback class that have been rising up the draft board, at least the projection board as of late. The other position I look at is the aforementioned wide receiver. You've got guys from Oklahoma, you've got guys from Alabama, you've got guys from Clemson, you've got Cephas from Wisconsin, you've got guys from TCU, you've got guys from LSU. I mean, you've got really, really, really good wide receivers. And I imagine a team like the Packers, who has struggled with finding a number 2, a number 3, a number 4 wide receiver, is going to dip into that pool of wide receivers heavily in the NFL Draft come April because look, I mean, there's probably 20 wide receivers that are going to be drafted. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a team like Green Bay that goes out and gets 3 of them because there was that much talent on the board at the wide receiver position. So on the offensive side of the ball, those are the 2 that really stick out to me.
Definitely JT running a 4.3940. That's pretty fast. Him and Saquon Barkley, the only 2 backs to ever do that in less than 4.45. So it's interesting to see where he'll go. I do believe, as you said, he is the number 1 back in the draft. Some guys to look at, Isaiah Simmons, linebacker safety. I don't know if you guys saw this. You want to guess what he ran?
Oh, I did see this. Is that the really big guy?
Yeah.
He ran like a 4.8, didn't he?
4.39.
4.39?
As a linebacker.
That's pretty good.
As a line, he's like 6'1", 280.
I could.
Or not 280. Not 280. 208, I want to say.
4.3. That's outrageous.
He looks mean. Like that's built in a lab is what they were saying.
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Yeah, that's a crazy number.
You know the Iowa defensive guy, Tristan Wirfs?
Sure.
Guess what he ran?
I don't know.
A 4.86.
You've got these 40 times down.
Yeah. This guy, I got another stat for you.
Let's hear it.
The ASU
Is it
punter.
40 time again?
Nope. The ASU punter, Michael Turk.
Okay.
Guess what he did?
What'd he do?
25 reps at 225.
Okay, so he's a punter.
He's a punter.
What does 25 reps have to do with punting?
For the brand.
Right.
For the brand. Do you know how many guys he beat out?
I know that. I mean,
225, 25 reps.
But he's a punter.
That's amazing.
What does that do to his draft stock? What is he going to be doing 25 reps for?
Pat McAfee's going to love the kid forever, 1.
Okay.
2, everyone's going to love him.
Does that guarantee you a contract? No.
No. but he's still a great punter. I want to say he averaged like 46 yards a punt. He had a remarkable punt of 75 yards. That was his career long.
Okay.
And he averaged over 50.
Okay, so that, yeah.
So he's a great punter, and he's built. He is good.
Clearly he's built, yeah.
I got another 40 for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Henry Ruggs III, 4.27.
That's fast.
That's fast.
That's
He's
fast.
big.
Is that the fastest time?
Yeah, it was the fastest time this year. He was 5/10 off. Yeah, 5/100 off, I think, I want to say.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, he's a top 3 receiver for sure.
Yeah, a lot of draft prospects coming into the season. It's going to be great to see what happens. A lot of this class was a lot. When we were coming into this, we didn't see a lot of talent like last year coming in.
Yeah.
But coming at the end of it now, at the end of the season, there was a lot of talent here. A lot of good talent. Quarterback, receiver, defense, and offense. Like anywhere you look, there is at least 10 guys in each position, it seems like, where they're capable of playing at the NFL level for a long time.
Now, is this another narrative of, it feels like we go through this almost every year, so I guess is this different from past years in your mind, or is this very similar? Because it seems like every year we feel, this is a weak draft class at X position, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, whatever. And then as we get through the combine season, we're starting to say, oh boy, he's a first-round pick. Now, is this an overreaction? Is this just dealing with what is the group in front of us? Or is this truthfully a very strong draft class? I mean, obviously, we don't know the answer now, but I guess
we're going to find out. And I honestly think that this is going to be a strong draft class. No one really expected, quarterbacks to stand out. And here's Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in NCAA history. He's going to go number 1 overall, expected to. And I honestly think he will. And I don't think you shouldn't believe that. But then there's just other guys like Henry Ruggs, JT, number 1 running back in the draft. He should be in the league for at least 7 to 8 years. Yeah. And he should perform at a very high level. And like you said, all those teams that had great receivers in their college days, we expect them to perform. Now, if they will, who knows? You never know. Right. NFL's a lot different than college. I just honestly think this could be a year where it's different and we see a lot of talent. And this is the year where you see things to start to take over into the new generation and new era of kids coming to play at pro level.
So let me throw this at you while we have a couple minutes, and that is some of the reports that have come from Indianapolis over the weekend. So obviously Chase Young has been seemingly the slot for the number 2 pick to Washington, but a report came out over the weekend that Washington was having serious conversations with Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback from Alabama, about competing with Dwayne Haskins, who they drafted out of Ohio State just a year ago. What is Washington thinking how do you do that?
I think it
feels like Josh Rosen in Arizona all
over
again.
I feel like it would be a dumb mistake if Washington did not draft Young, because Young is the best defensive player in the draft.
If not the best player in the draft.
Yeah, I completely could understand that argument. I think they would be dumb if they did that. I think Haskins is a good quarterback. He can play at the level. I think he just needs help. Offensive line, he needs help, and he needs some playmakers there. He's got a great back in Adrian Peterson to help, be his mentor, where if he needs questions, Peterson has played with great quarterbacks like Drew Brees in New Orleans, but I think Haskins just needs help, and I think it would be dumb if Washington went and drafted Tua instead of Young.
Again, I think it reminds me of a year ago where Cliff Kingsbury got into Arizona. They already had Josh Rosen from the draft the year prior. Then they go out and draft Kyler Murray with the number 1 pick. It's feeling very similar to that as Ron Rivera, now the new head coach of the Redskins, comes in and now is talking about drafting Tua Tagovailoa with the 2nd overall pick. I agree. I don't think that's a good move. The only thing we've seen out of Tua, when he's playing, obviously spectacular, right?
He's
Kid's
a great
quarterback. However, he hasn't been healthy. The last 2 years, it seems, he's just been piling up injuries. So I think that's a risky direction to go at pick number 2 when you have a guy like A, Chase Young sitting there, and B, like Dwayne Haskins sitting in your locker room already. I don't know why Washington would go that direction, but nonetheless, that's the report that came out over the weekend. The other report coming out is Cincinnati. Obviously, they're very high on Joe Burrow with the number 1 overall pick. We've known this since before Joe Burrow won the Heisman, right?
Yeah.
However, Burrow really, really wants him to re-sign A.J. Green, but it seems like that marriage is done with. So does that create some sort of tension in the Cincinnati locker room if that doesn't happen? Because truthfully, I do not see a way A.J. Green stays put in Cincinnati. I have no
They talked about tagging him, which would be interesting, an interesting move for them. I don't know. Joe Burrow wanted A.J. Green to stay in there. They might tag him. That's what I read. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that, but I think that's such a silly theory or silly thing to do because he was healthy at the end of the year and he just wasn't playing because he doesn't want to play for Cincinnati.
Yeah. But you bring in a guy like Joe Burrow, does that make him want to stay? I don't know. He was reported going to go to the Packers, or not go to the Packers, but interested in being Green Bay. It's hard to say what's going to happen. Will they tag him? Who knows? That's why it's the best time of the year.
It is the best time of the year when there's not football on the field. I would agree with that.
Well, there's still the XFL.
We got that going, don't we?
All I can say is that I did not expect a punch to be thrown into the mix about NFL draft prospect talk. So
Yes.
you threw a whole 180 on me, Jackson, right there. But nonetheless, though, a lot of great insight from the both of you here about what could happen in April. While the NFL starts preparations for a new season, the NHL only has a quarter of the regular season left before the Stanley Cup playoffs. In the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins had the best record in hockey, while the Tampa Bay Lightning and Washington Capitals trailed by only a few points. In the West, the defending champions St. Louis Blues hold a slight lead over the Colorado Avalanche in the conference, but the playoff race is a bit closer in the West than in the East. What factors do you think will play out in teams fighting for a playoff spot towards April?
I'm going to take this one because the Western Conference is insane. You got the 5 seed, your team, the Edmonton Oilers, at 76 points. And you got the Minnesota Wild at 71 points in 11th.
Yeah, that's some near separation right there.
That's crazy. And both teams have 65 games played. Edmonton is in action tonight against Nashville, who is the 8th seed. That's got big implications for the Wild and for Edmonton because Nashville can jump up all the way into 6th place, which would be crazy. It's going to be interesting. We got 5 through 11, 5 points between Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Nashville, Winnipeg, Arizona, and Minnesota. Crazy stuff can happen. We got Nashville at Minnesota on Tuesday night, Arizona at Vancouver on Wednesday. It's going to be fun to watch these games. It's that time of the year where it's the best time of the year. Playoff hockey starts happening, March is around, and then going over to the Eastern Conference, we got Boston and Tampa Tuesday night, 1 and 2 seed, and then on Wednesday we got the 3 seed Washington against the 4 seed Philly in Washington. It's going to be fun to watch this, and the 6 seed from the 11 seed as well, 5 points.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, you look at even from the 2nd seed, or excuse me, the 3rd seed, Washington with 86 points, down to the 5 seed, 80 points for Pittsburgh, 78-70, 78-78. All 3 teams, New York, Toronto, Columbus, all with 78 points right in the midst of the Eastern Conference playoffs. It's close with less than 20 games remaining in the season. I don't think we're super surprised at the top of the Eastern Conference, though, as it has been, it seems, as of the last few years, Boston, Tampa Bay, Washington, kind of controlling that conference. Tampa Bay, the one of the 3 that has yet to really break through. But back to the West, the shocking team to me, and I could just be overlooking them when we were heading into the season, but I didn't expect Colorado to be this good.
Yeah, they've got a lot of talent. They're a very good team with a lot of goal scorers on there. Last year was a lot of injury prone for their team, and I think this team, they really put it together, and this year it's really good for them. They're a good team. Honestly, if I had to pick a team from the West, St. Louis is really good just because they won the Stanley Cup last year. They got great goaltending in Jordan Binnington. Colorado's very good. The West in the Central is just crazy good. St. Louis, Colorado, Dallas, Nashville, Winnipeg, Minnesota, all in playoff contention. All of those teams can make it. That's one conference or one division in the Central. So Colorado, St. Louis, and Dallas are all built for playoffs just because their division is so hard, and that's why those 3 teams up top, St. Louis, Colorado, and Dallas, they're so good is because every night when they play within their division, they're playing with playoff implications on the line every single time. Absolutely. And that's why it's good because those could be playoff matchups later on. Like St. Louis could face Nashville right away, and they could play them. I don't know when they play them next, but we could see these teams face each other, and there's still, like you said, 20 games around that left. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens down the line.
Who's your way too early pick for the Stanley Cup?
Way too early.
Well, not way too early anymore, I guess.
Not way too early anymore. I think Washington.
Okay.
Alexander.
I think they'll win 2 in 3 years, huh?
Yeah, I think they're a good team. In the East, I would say it's them. I don't know if there's a sleeper. Carolina's been very good. Last year they were very good.
Yeah.
They had a very good run. They did get rid of some pieces that went to Florida and Eric Halla and some other guys. In the West, Winnipeg's always good in the playoffs. They're very good at home. Unbelievable. Whiteout, gotta love that. Hockey. Edmonton, gotta love your guy. Connor
Gotta love my
McDavid.
guy.
He's a great player. Got him back from injury. St. Louis, Colorado. Favorite Washington in the East. Favorite in the West, I would say Colorado. Hard for me to agree to that, being a Wild fan. I'm sure you could take in that too, but Colorado's a great team. If I had to pick two, it's between Colorado and Washington.
Got it. Yeah, I think the Central Division, honestly, is the best division in hockey right now. As the Stanley Cup playoffs will begin in early April, as both conferences will have the top 3 teams from each division and 2 wildcard teams playing for a chance to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup. We'll take our final time out here, and then when we come back, we'll do some buy or sell. This is the Sports Hub on SBTV.
UW-Stevens Point is home.
It's a university where professors know your name and get you involved in research.
They inspire us to realize big dreams.
At UW-Stevens Point, sustainability is what we stand for.
Our beautiful campus encourages exploration, developing new fields, and problem solving for the real world.
It's a great place to launch your career.
UW-Stevens Point is home.
Apply today at uwsp.edu.
College has given me the flexibility to pursue my passions and my interests, and I've recreated my identity for myself aside from just being an athlete.
My greatest personal discovery has been that I am capable of doing things that I didn't know I was capable of doing.
To be able to study what I wanted to and continue to play the sport I love, all of those things came together very nicely in one package in Division III.
Welcome back into the Sports Hub. Let's wrap up the show here real quick with some buy or sell. First one, Jacksonville will trade Nick Foles to a new team after deciding to go with Gardner Minshew for the future.
I think this one's tough because obviously Nick Foles has succeeded tremendously. I mean, he's been at the pinnacle as a backup quarterback, and he just only had 1 year in Jacksonville. Is it possible? Sure, but I think the teams that are really looking for a quarterback are going to find their next guy in the draft. So I'll buy it, but I don't know. I don't know how soon this will happen.
I'm going to buy it as well, but like you said, how soon it's going to happen and where he'll go is going to be the big questions. I think Gardner Minshew, young quarterback, rookie, he looked good last year, but he also struggled a lot in some games. But I do believe that Nick Foles will not be a Jaguar.
I'm actually going to sell that. I think Jacksonville's still going to need a backup quarterback, and if they can't find a suitable person for Foles, they're just going to have to keep him there as a backup for Gardner Minshew. Next one, the Packers will look into acquiring Falcons tight end Austin Hooper in free agency.
I'll buy the fact they look into it. I think they'll look into a lot of free agents. Do I think they sign him? No, I don't. I don't think that's the route they'll go, although Hooper has had several good years in Atlanta. I don't know how well he fits Matt LaFleur's system. So I think, yeah, they'll look into it. No, I don't think they'll sign him.
I'm going to buy that they look into it. I agree with you that I don't think they're going to sign him, but it could be becoming down to him in the end because there's not a lot of tight ends out there that are in free agency other than him. Although I want to say there was one other one that was a big guy that, was it Greg Olsen maybe, that he wanted to go play in Green Bay? I may have heard that, not sure. But I didn't hear that myself, just so you guys know. I'm not sourcing right now. But I'm going to buy that they'll look into it.
Yeah, I'll buy that as well. It's tough to say whether or not Gutekunst will make an offer towards Hooper, but I do think they will look into it a little bit more, especially at the tight end position. Finally, the Pointers men's hockey team will receive an at-large bid to the national tournament if they win the WIAC championship on Saturday.
The reigning national champion, ranked 7th in the nation. I know there's not an automatic bid for winning the WIAC, but how could you have a tournament without your reigning national champ? And what we assume will be the WIAC champion as well. So I'm going to buy that absolutely.
I'm going to buy it as well. I'm going to go right off of you, and I think if they win it, you got to have them in there. They're 7th right now. A lot of teams lost this past weekend, so that helps them in their case. And the WIAC is still the hardest conference in D3 hockey, without a doubt. We got 3 teams that are ranked in the top 15, and almost 4 if Superior and River Falls would have moved up a little bit. So I think you definitely got to have the WIAC champion in there and the reigning national champion.
I buy that as well. It's going to be exciting to see that game on Saturday. That's all we have time for on today's show. I'd like to thank Alex and Jackson, as well as our technical staff, and all their hard work to make this show possible. Be sure to check out our Facebook page at SBTV WSP Television. Follow us on Instagram at SBTV_UWSP, and check out our Twitter pages as well. Lastly, go to the UWSP Athletics page for all things Pointer sports. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of the Sports Hub.
He's really gotten that in there.